47 license icons went gray before the board finished saying my name. At 7:04 on Monday morning, federal compliance did not collapse loudly. It vanished one green checkmark at a time. Northbridge Medical Logistics had refrigerated trucks waiting outside 4 distribution hubs. Columbus, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Phoenix. Every truck was loaded with regulated medical inventory, surgical trays, diagnostic devices, blood storage components, temperature-controlled hospital equipment worth more than most houses. None of it could leave the dock. The federal licensing portal locked every outbound shipment at once. Dispatch thought it was a software issue. Legal thought it was a renewal glitch. Preston Vale thought somebody had fat-fingered a password. He was wrong on all 3. The emergency board call started 11 minutes later. I know because my phone lit up at 7:15. First came the chief legal officer, then operations, then the board secretary, then Preston himself. I let every call go to voicemail. Not because I was angry, because I no longer worked there. 4 days earlier, that same board called me legacy infrastructure. They said it with polite smiles and expensive coffee. Preston said the company needed a future without human bottlenecks. A few directors laughed like that was clever. I had sat at the far end of the table. Same Navy suit, same leather notebook, same badge I had carried for 23 years. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend my career. I only wrote down the exact phrase. Legacy infrastructure. Now the infrastructure had legally left the building. My name is Harvey Vance. I am 54 years old. For 23 years, I managed federal and state licensing at Northbridge Medical Logistics. That sounds boring until a hospital needs a heart valve before sunrise. Northbridge did not move ordinary freight. We handled regulated medical devices across state lines. Some shipments required temperature logs every 15 minutes. Some required sealed chain of custody records. Some could not sit outside refrigeration for more than 90 seconds. Every warehouse had permits. Every route had restrictions. Every license had renewal dates, agency contacts, bond writers, and responsible official requirements. That last part mattered most. Responsible official. That was not a nickname. That was not a job title Preston could move into a spreadsheet. It was a legal designation. My name sat on 47 license files. Not because I wanted power, because agencies require accountability. Someone must answer when regulated medical inventory crosses state lines. Someone must certify inspection readiness. Someone must sign corrective action responses. Someone must tell the truth when paperwork gets uncomfortable. If you have ever been treated like dead weight by people standing on your work, pay attention. Because this was not revenge. This was procedure. At 7:32, the third agency notice arrived. At 7:41, the largest hospital customer froze incoming orders. At 8:06, Preston finally left a voicemail. Harvey, he said, we need you to fix this immediately. I listened once, took a sip of coffee, and opened my transition folder. The first page showed every warning they ignored. The second showed every license tied to my name. The third showed Preston's signature. That morning was not the beginning. It was the receipt. The real story started 23 years earlier, in a beige records room behind our first Columbus warehouse. I was 31 then. Northbridge had 12 trucks, 1 refrigerated dock, and a founder who still answered customer calls himself. My first desk was a folding table beside a humming label printer. My first job was simple. Keep the company licensed enough to grow without getting shut down. Simple does not mean easy. Medical logistics is not normal transportation. You do not just put hospital equipment in a truck and hope traffic behaves. You track temperature. You verify storage conditions. You document custody. You match permits to locations. You answer state boards, federal offices, inspectors, hospital auditors, and insurers. Everyone wants proof. Nobody wants excuses. Over time, my job became the nervous system nobody saw. If Atlanta expanded cold storage, I filed the facility amendment. If Phoenix changed its controlled access room, I updated inspection records. If Pennsylvania required a new bond writer, I made sure it was signed before renewal. If a hospital auditor asked for 2 years of temperature logs, I knew where they were. By 45, I could read a licensing dashboard like weather radar. Green meant permission. Yellow meant attention. Red meant stop everything. Gray meant someone had broken the legal chain. That was why I never trusted Preston's automation plan. Software can remind you of a deadline. It cannot become accountable to an agency. It cannot appear in an inspection interview. It cannot sign a corrective action letter with personal authority. That distinction matters. Preston never learned it. He thought risk transfer meant moving responsibility from people into platforms. I told him that licensing did not work that way. You can transfer insurance exposure. You can transfer operating tasks. You cannot transfer legal accountability without agency approval. He smiled when I said that, like I had brought a rotary phone to a technology meeting. 2 months before they removed me, I asked legal for a litigation hold. Preston had already started deleting old compliance warnings from planning decks. He called them noise. I called them records. The hold request covered restructuring memos, license matrices, board notes, agency correspondence, and transition emails. Legal acknowledged receipt. Preston did not. Instead, he sent me a calendar invite titled Modernization Alignment. That was corporate language for sit down and stop objecting. I went anyway. I always went. My job was not to be liked. My job was to make sure a surgical device could cross 3 state lines legally. My job was to make sure a blood storage component stayed documented every mile. My job was to make sure Northbridge never confused movement with permission. Preston thought I managed paperwork. The truth was colder than that. The paperwork managed permission. And once permission disappeared, every truck became an expensive parking lot. For years, nobody cared how licensing worked because nothing stopped moving. That was the curse of doing a critical job well. People only notice the bridge after it closes. In 23 years, I had kept Northbridge open through audits, expansions, acquisitions, and inspections. Not once had we missed a renewal window. Not once had a hub lost shipping authority because of paperwork. Not once had a hospital contract failed because regulators questioned our permissions. The board called that operational maturity. I called it Tuesday. The first real test came in Georgia. Atlanta wanted to expand cold storage by 12,000 square feet. Operations treated it like a construction project. New racks, new sensors, new loading pattern. I treated it like a licensing event. The state permit referenced the old floor plan. The federal registration referenced the old controlled access zone. The hospital contract referenced both. If one inspector walked through that hub before amendment approval, our distribution authority could freeze. I caught it 3 days before launch. The expansion paused for 48 hours. Operations complained. Sales complained louder. Then the amendment cleared. 2 weeks later, that hub handled a rush order for a cardiac network without a single hold. Nobody remembered the pause. Everyone remembered the revenue. The second test came in Pennsylvania. A bond writer was missing one signature before renewal. Finance said it was administrative. Preston would have called it friction. I called it a cliff. That missing signature backed our authority to handle regulated inventory in 3 counties. Without it, renewal could have entered manual review. Manual review meant delays. Delays meant shipments rerouted. Reroutes meant hospital penalties. I drove 90 miles in freezing rain to get the signature myself. The next morning, the license renewed green. No applause. No memo. Just permission. The third test was the biggest. A hospital network accused us of mishandling temperature-controlled equipment. One sensor showed a temperature excursion during a transfer in Kentucky. Their attorneys wanted answers by noon. I pulled route logs, dock camera timestamps, refrigeration telemetry, driver checklists, and custody records. The excursion lasted 4 minutes inside an approved tolerance window. Corrected. Documented. Isolated. That response saved a contract worth $180 million. The board praised operations for customer retention. My department got a smaller budget. That was how value disappeared at Northbridge. If we prevented disaster, executives called the danger theoretical. If we asked for funding, they called us cautious. If we warned them twice, they called us outdated. Preston understood that weakness immediately. He knew the board loved invisible savings. So he sold them a story. He said licensing was fragmented. He said my team hoarded tribal knowledge. He said artificial intelligence could normalize regulatory workflows and remove human dependency. The phrase sounded clean enough to hide the risk. I sat through his workshop with my hands folded. Then he reached slide 18. It showed my face beside an old server rack. Under it were 2 words. Human middleware. A few directors laughed. I wrote the phrase in my notebook. Not because it hurt. Because jokes become evidence when the shipment holds start. Preston Vale arrived wearing the confidence of a man who had never renewed anything personally. His resume looked perfect from 30 feet away. Chicago consulting firm. Digital transformation practice. Healthcare logistics strategy. 2 conference panels about artificial intelligence in regulated operations. The board loved him before he opened his laptop. He used their favorite language. Efficiency, scalability, modernization, enterprise visibility, human dependency reduction. Then he clicked to Project CleanLine. The first slide showed a bright dashboard replacing 47 separate license files. The second showed automated renewal alerts. The third showed agency correspondence routed through a shared inbox. The fourth showed my department reduced from 7 people to 1 contractor and software support. I watched the directors nod. They were not bad people. That was the problem. Bad people are easier to spot. These were smart people being flattered by simple answers. Preston told them licensing could be centralized, normalized, and made person-independent. That last phrase made my pen stop moving. Person-independent. In normal operations, that sounds efficient. In regulated logistics, it can be fatal to permission. I raised my hand. Preston smiled before I spoke. That smile said he had already filed me under resistance. I asked which agency had approved removing named responsible officials from the license structure. The room shifted slightly. He said the platform would manage continuity. I asked again, which agency approved it? Preston clicked to another slide. This one had colored arrows and no answer. He said, Harvey, we are not eliminating accountability. We are digitizing it. I told him accountability was not a field in a database. It was a recognized person with authority. Some licenses required board-approved designees. Some required advance officer change notices. Some required surety bond writers. Some required inspection clearance before transfer. Some could enter automatic hold if the named official left. Preston nodded like he was listening. Then he said we should not let 20th century paperwork block 21st century healthcare. A few directors smiled. One whispered, good line. I wrote that down too. After the meeting, I sent a 6-page memo. It listed every license class, every transfer rule, every notice deadline, and every risk. I copied legal, operations, the board secretary, and Preston. My subject line was plain. License continuity risks under proposed restructure. Preston forwarded it to the board 19 minutes later. He added one sentence. This is exactly the legacy resistance we discussed. That forwarded email told me everything. He was not misunderstanding the risk. He was branding it. 2 days later, I printed the license matrix and laid it across my dining table. 47 active permissions. 31 tied directly to approved responsible officials. 9 tied to bond writers. 4 tied to pending facility inspections. 3 tied to open corrective action plans. Preston thought he was cutting old wiring from a modern company. He had no idea some wires were holding the doors legally open. The betrayal happened during the quarterly modernization meeting. Same boardroom. Same Lakeview. Same polished table where everyone pretended confidence meant competence. Preston opened with numbers. Projected savings. Reduced headcount. Faster renewals. Improved visibility. Lower compliance overhead. The directors liked every slide because every slide made risk look cheaper. Then he showed the new org chart. My licensing department disappeared into operational data services. 7 specialists became 1 contractor, 1 platform, and a shared inbox. My title changed to Compliance Transition Advisor. 30 days. No authority. No final approval. No agency contact ownership. Just train the replacement system and smile on the way out. The board chair adjusted his glasses and looked at me kindly. Harvey, he said, we respect what you built. But infrastructure has to evolve. Preston leaned back like he had waited all morning for his line. Some legacy systems need to be retired before they retire the company. The laugh was small, but it traveled. Legal looked down. Operations stared at the screen. The board secretary typed without blinking. I felt nothing dramatic. No shaking hands. No tight chest. Just a quiet click in my head. The kind that comes when a file closes. I opened my notebook and wrote the sentence exactly. Then I asked one question. Has the board approved replacement responsible officials for all license classes? Silence. Preston answered first. The platform will manage continuity during transition. That was not an answer. I asked again. Has the board approved human designees where agencies require named accountability? The board chair looked toward legal. Legal looked toward Preston. Preston smiled too quickly. We are not here to litigate hypotheticals, Harvey. I nodded once. That sentence went into the notebook too. After the meeting, Human Resources handed me a separation package. It came in a white folder with a blue sticky tab on the signature page. 30 weeks of pay, health coverage through the quarter, a non-disparagement clause, a confidentiality clause, a consulting requirement. One certification page said license functions could continue uninterrupted after transition. That page was the trap. They wanted my signature under their assumption. I read it twice while the Human Resources director watched me. Then I asked her to send the full packet by email. She said Preston wanted same-day confirmation. I said Preston could put that in writing. 20 minutes later, he did. Harvey, please confirm transition will not create material licensing interruption. I stared at the email from my office. Behind me, my shelves held 23 years of inspection binders, Georgia amendments, Pennsylvania bond writers, Arizona cold chain approvals, federal registrations, hospital audit responses. I typed one sentence. I cannot certify that without approved responsible official replacements. I copied legal. I copied the board secretary. I copied operations. Then I attached the 6-page risk memo again. Preston replied 7 minutes later. Noted. Proceed with transition. That was the moment he stepped over the line. Not because he disagreed. Disagreement is allowed. He acknowledged the warning and moved forward anyway. I printed the thread, placed it in my transition folder, and began the cleanest exit Northbridge had ever seen. For the next 3 days, I did exactly what they asked. That was the part Preston never saw coming. I trained the contractor. I explained renewal calendars. I mapped agency contacts. I labeled shared folders. I documented every license dependency in plain English. No sarcasm. No missing pages. No hidden passwords. No dramatic exit. Just procedure. The transition record was 118 pages long. The first section listed all 47 licenses. The second listed responsible official requirements. The third listed agency notice deadlines. The fourth listed bond writer dependencies. The fifth listed inspection commitments. The sixth listed open corrective action plans. The seventh listed what could not legally transfer without approval. I sent it to Preston, legal, operations, and the board secretary. Subject line. Required license continuity review before role change. Preston replied from his phone 7 minutes later. Noted. Proceed with transition. I saved the email. Then I kept working. By Wednesday afternoon, I had completed every task Human Resources assigned. I turned over contacts. I delivered templates. I exported renewal calendars. I sat with the contractor while she asked honest questions. Her name was Melissa. She was smart enough to be worried. She pointed at the Arizona license and asked why the responsible official field was highlighted red. I told her red meant no approved successor existed. She asked whether the system would allow shipment release without that field. I said the system might. The agency would not. She stopped typing. That was when she understood what Preston had not. On Thursday morning, Human Resources scheduled my final closeout. My badge would deactivate at 5. My title would become former employee at midnight. Before lunch, I sent one last email. It was not emotional. It was not long. It listed 31 licenses without approved responsible official replacements. 9 licenses with pending bond writer updates. 4 licenses awaiting facility inspection clearance. 3 licenses tied to open corrective action plans. I wrote that continued operations could require agency confirmation before shipment release. I asked legal to confirm whether all notices had been filed. No one answered. At 4:30, I returned my badge. At 4:45, I boxed my desk. At 4:52, I submitted required withdrawal notices to the agencies that required disclosure when a named official left active authority. That was not sabotage. That was compliance. Agencies require accurate records. I would not stay listed as accountable for shipments I no longer controlled. At 5, my badge stopped opening the elevator gate. At 5:15, I drove home through cold rain. My phone stayed silent until Monday morning. That silence told me everything. They had not filed successors. They had not updated bond writers. They had not cleared inspections. They had not understood the difference between access and authority. The licenses did not need revenge. They had rules. And rules are patient until someone important ignores them. The first license hold appeared at 7:04 on Monday morning. By 7:06, 3 more had followed. By 7:11, the federal portal showed pending review across every high-value distribution lane. Northbridge operations thought the dashboard was frozen. It was not. It was finally accurate. The Columbus hub had 6 refrigerated trucks staged before sunrise. Pittsburgh had 4. Atlanta had 9. Phoenix had 7. Every dock supervisor saw the same gray status. Shipment release unavailable. Responsible official verification required. Agency review pending. Inside the boardroom, Preston tried to make it sound technical. He told operations to refresh the portal. He told information technology to check credentials. He told legal to call their agency contacts. Then the notices started arriving. Ohio requested confirmation of responsible official replacement. Pennsylvania requested updated bond rider documentation. Georgia requested facility amendment review before continued release. Arizona requested clarification on authority after officer withdrawal. The language was calm. That made it worse. Regulators do not need dramatic words. They have authority. By 8:15, Northbridge's largest hospital customer called. Their surgical network needed implants moved before afternoon scheduling. Operations could not promise release. The customer froze the order and began rerouting through a competitor. That was the first crack the board could hear. Then came the second. A federal reviewer asked why Northbridge certified continuity without approved successors. The chief legal officer asked Preston what that meant. Preston said Harvey must have failed to complete transition documents. That lie lasted under 6 minutes. The board secretary opened my transition folder. 118 pages. Sent before my final closeout. Confirmed received. Copied to Preston. Copied to legal. Copied to operations. Copied to the board secretary. The file listed every missing approval he had ignored. Preston shifted to another explanation. He said the risk was theoretical. Legal opened my 6-page memo. He said the platform would manage continuity. Operations opened Melissa's training notes. He said the agencies were overreacting. The chief legal officer opened the regulatory clauses. Automatic hold language. Named official disclosure language. Bond rider requirements. Inspection clearance conditions. Corrective action restrictions. That was when the room started understanding the word gray. Gray did not mean glitch. Gray meant permission had paused. Then outside counsel found the real problem. Preston had sent a readiness certification to the board 2 days before my exit. It stated no material regulatory interruption expected. He had signed it personally. Below his signature, he attached a shortened license tracker. The shortened tracker removed the red fields. No approved successor. Missing bond rider. Inspection pending. Corrective action open. All gone. Not resolved. Removed. That single attachment changed the conversation. The board was no longer asking why licenses paused. They were asking why the board had been told they would not. At 9:38, Preston called me again. I watched his name appear on my phone. I let it ring. He left no voicemail this time. Men like Preston love records until records answer back. By 10, outside counsel called instead. His voice was careful. "Mr. Vance," he said, "we are reviewing the transition materials. Can you confirm whether these are complete and unaltered?" I looked at my folder, my email receipts, and the notebook beside my coffee. Then I gave the only answer that mattered. Yes, and I can prove when they received them. By noon, Northbridge had 3 different kinds of panic. Operations panic sounded like dock supervisors asking permission to move trucks. Legal panic sounded like careful voices saying preserve everything. Board panic sounded like silence between expensive questions. I stayed home and did nothing dramatic. That was my whole plan. Do nothing dramatic. I did not contact hospital customers. I did not call reporters. I did not threaten Preston. I did not touch Northbridge systems. I only answered outside counsel through my attorney and sent documents already in my possession. Timeline first. Warnings second. Transition record third. License rules fourth. Preston's replies last. Clean evidence has a rhythm. It does not need volume. Outside counsel asked whether I would explain the license dependencies. I agreed, but only in writing. My response was 9 pages. Each license category had 3 columns. What the agency required. What Northbridge had approved. What remained missing? The answer was ugly because it was simple. Northbridge had platform access. It did not have legal authority. Preston kept trying to blur that line. Authority does not blur for regulators. By Tuesday morning, agencies requested direct corrective action plans. Not software screenshots. Not transformation decks. Actual responsible official replacements. Approved bond writers. Inspection confirmations. Corrective action ownership. Northbridge could release some low-risk inventory through emergency exemptions. The high-value lanes stayed frozen. That hurt. Hospital customers do not like uncertainty. They like backups, contracts, and penalties. By Wednesday, the $180 million network contract entered hold review. Competitors started taking emergency routes. Northbridge trucks sat loaded while other companies moved the freight. That was when Preston switched from confidence to accusation. His attorney sent a letter claiming I had disrupted operations by withdrawing agency responsibility. My attorney answered with one paragraph. Mr. Vance did not remove licenses. Northbridge removed the named official without approved replacements. That sentence traveled through the board faster than any slide Preston ever made. The difference sounded small. It was everything. I had not taken anything with me. I had only refused to remain accountable for shipments I no longer controlled. Then the final turn came from the board secretary. She found the original modernization packet Preston had edited. In the first version, my red risk fields were visible. In the final version, they were gone. But the document history remained. Every deletion had a timestamp. Every timestamp came after my warning email. One deleted note said automatic hold likely if successor not approved. Another said bond riders incomplete. Another said audit exposure material. Preston had not misunderstood the risk. He had removed it from view. By Thursday evening, outside counsel called again. His voice had changed. Less cautious. More certain. Harvey, he said, the board has convened an emergency session. I looked at the rain sliding down my kitchen window. 23 years of quiet work had become one loud question. Not why the licenses vanished. Why Preston told them they would not. The emergency session began at 6 o'clock on Thursday evening. I was not in the boardroom. I did not need to be. My documents were there. My emails were there. Preston's edits were there. The license portal was there, gray and silent on the wall screen. Outside counsel opened with the timeline. My warning memo. Preston's forwarded insult. My continuity review. Preston's noted response. My final notice. Preston's readiness certification. Then the document history. Red fields deleted after receipt. Automatic hold warning deleted. Bond rider warning deleted. Audit exposure warning deleted. No one needed to raise their voice. The record was doing fine by itself. Preston tried calling it a formatting cleanup. Legal asked why only risk fields were cleaned. He said the platform vendor advised simplification. The vendor denied that before the meeting ended. He said the agencies had overreacted. Outside counsel read the license clauses aloud. Responsible official replacement required. Bond rider update required. Facility inspection clearance required. Corrective action ownership required. Permission had rules. Preston had treated them like footnotes. By 9 that night, the board removed him from all regulatory decisions. By Friday morning, he was terminated for cause. His transformation plan was suspended. His severance entered legal review. The board chair sent me a formal apology through counsel. It was careful, short, and probably expensive. Northbridge did not collapse forever. That was never what I wanted. Hospitals still needed equipment. Patients still needed supply chains. The company entered a monitored compliance agreement. 31 operations stayed suspended until approved replacements cleared. 9 bond riders were updated. For facilities past reinspection, 3 corrective action plans were assigned to new responsible officials. The $180 million hospital network contract stayed frozen for 6 weeks. Competitors took pieces Northbridge never recovered. That was the price of confusing confidence with authority. My own settlement came later. Retaliation resolved. Wrongful termination resolved. Legal fees covered. No public parade. No victory lap. Just a wire transfer and a mutual statement nobody actually believed. 6 months after leaving, I opened Vance Regulatory Continuity in a small office outside Columbus. 1 conference table. 2 monitors. 1 wall covered with license calendars. My first client was a regional medical courier that had almost made the same mistake. My second was a hospital distributor terrified of artificial intelligence compliance shortcuts. I told both the same thing. Automate reminders. Automate routing. Automate document assembly. Never automate accountability. Sometimes I still think about that boardroom laugh. Human middleware. Legacy infrastructure. Old wiring. They were trying to insult me. They accidentally described the truth. Infrastructure is not glamorous. It does not clap for itself. It does not trend on investor decks. It just keeps doors open, trucks moving, and permission alive. Preston thought modernization meant removing the person who understood the rules. Karma showed him modernization without permission is just a faster way to stop. I did not make 47 licenses vanish. I only stopped lending my name to a system that mocked the work behind them. They thought I was outdated infrastructure. Then they learned infrastructure is what keeps the doors legally open.